Friendship is going to be long-lasting. It has to be based on commitment. As he says, remember that every genuine personal commitment has two components, consistency and care. And I quote from him here, consistency keeps the external structure steady, but care breathes lasting love inside the structure. Consistency is the muscle, care is the warm blood. Consistency is our predictability. Care is our personal presence. So it is your relationship that makes pastoring possible. And so that requires a commitment on your part to be consistent with people in praying for them, being available to them, contacting them, and being an example to them, because out of this, pastoral care will be taking place.
This concludes Unit 10. Please stop the tape. Our next unit will focus on how the lay pastor listens. Welcome to Unit 11 of the Lay Pastors Ministry Equipping Seminar entitled The Lay Pastor Listens. In this segment, Dr. Steinbronn emphasizes one of the major roles of the lay pastor.
A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we be like that wise bird? We're going to be talking about listening. And there are two kinds of listening. The first is a very common one. It's called passive listening. It means you're just not saying anything. It's keeping the lip buttoned. I have a cartoon, and it's a picture of an aquarium, and there is a large fish in here, and he has stopped before a little plastic object, which is a deep-sea diver, and he's saying to that plastic object, did anyone ever tell you that you are one heck of a good listener? Well, that's passive listening, and it's kind of an extreme of passive listening, but that's what it is. When I was in Lakeland, Florida, giving a seminar, during the break, one person came up to me and handed me this here piece of paper. And let me read it to you. It's a prayer. God, keep your arm around my shoulder and your hand over my mouth. That's passive listening. The second kind of listening is active listening. That is participating in the communication process. And this gets a little complex. One way of active listening is paraphrasing. That is repeating what you have heard in your own words. Like you may have a friend who says, I'm tired of our Bible study teacher treating us like children. And you would paraphrase that in your own words, saying, you don't appreciate your leader talking down to you. And then that opens up the flow of conversation. Another example would be that if you have one of your people who says, if my neighbor has any more of those all-night wild parties, I'm calling the police. And you respond not by judging or giving advice, but merely paraphrasing. You say, your neighbor's nighttime activities makes you angry. And then the person can go on, and then you can deal with the feelings and whatever. So the first skill in active listening is paraphrasing. The second is listening for what is not being said. Often what is not being said is more important than what is being said. For example, say a couple has 4 children, and you've heard them tell about only 3 of them. There probably is a reason they're not talking about the 4th, and you can ask a question about it. The third listening skill is listening over time. That is, you hear some topics repeatedly when you engage in conversation through the weeks, through the months, and even through the years. And this happened with me one time with a widow who had been widowed for 20 years. And I discovered one day, as I was alert to what was going on, that she was talking about Jack every once in a while. And this was a tip for me to take time. Well, would you tell me about your husband, what life was like before he passed away. And this just opened a pent-up flow of telling that had been kept down for a long time. Another example would be somebody who has had a trip to Israel, and you've picked up the idea that every once in a while they keep coming back to this. Well, you know that because of this, and listening over time and hearing it often, that this is very important to that person, so you ask a question and you take time to listen about the trip. What we have inside of us, you see, has to be said. And the more threatening it is, the more difficult it is, the tighter we keep the lid on. And so as we listen to things over a period of time, we can pry open that lid just by letting that person know that we are ready to listen, we can be trusted, and we are there for them. The fourth skill is listening to feelings as well as words. Listening is the silent shape of caring. Caring has many shapes. Pastoral caring has lots of forms, but listening is the silent shape of caring. So we can pick up people's enthusiasm or hurt or whatever by listening for their feelings as well as their words. I'd like to give you 5 basics about listening. One is that while we are listening, we can be giving ourselves to understanding what we are hearing. Sometimes we don't understand, but while we're listening, if we'll really zero in on that, we'll be able to understand what we're hearing. The second basic is that while we are listening, we can be learning. We can ask ourselves, why is this person telling me this? And why is this person telling me this now? Because that is significant. Out of all the things a person has to talk about, to have selected that one thing, you see, puts an importance upon it. The third basic is that while we are listening, we can be thinking. It may surprise you to learn that you can listen to 500 or 600 words a minute, but the person who is speaking can only speak 150 words a minute. And so this creates what's called lag time, time to listen to people and to be thinking about what they're meaning and the things that aren't being said and so forth. The fourth basic is that by listening, we can encourage other people to talk about what they need or want to tell. Our good listening builds confidence and assures them that we are interested in what they are saying and that they have a license to just go ahead and tell it all. People have a deep need to be heard. The fifth basic is that by listening, we can be sure that we are understanding what they are intending to say. People don't always say what they intend to say. My father came from Germany when he was 19 years old, and he never was able to speak the language without a broken brogue and didn't understand a lot of the syntax of the English language. And so often he would say, you have to take a Dutchman by what he means, not by what he says. So good listening helps us to understand what a person is meaning to say. I'd like now to step over to the flip chart and just have this diagram of this. This is the communication process. There is the sender who has something in his or her mind that he wants to communicate to this person, so this is the message. Now, let me just pause here to say that my guess is that you have learned by now that I'm very enthusiastic about the lay pastor's ministry, that I have a high energy level about it. And the reason for that is not so much because of the words that I say, because in the communication process, the communication is dependent only 7% upon the words. It's dependent 38% upon the tone of voice and 53% on the body language. So what has communicated to you? The words, yes, but more so the enthusiasm you hear in my voice and the body language that communicates to you. Lay pastoring is certainly important to Mel Steinbron. So this sender has something to communicate to this person, and then after hearing it, has to determine what that means. And so there's some vacillation back and forth here in the process of perceiving what is being said and then making a response, either answering the question or making a comment or giving some advice to either say that this is the end or that you're free to continue on. Now there's also a dissonance that takes place. It may be, well, it may be jet noise overhead that we have once in a while that detracts us. It may be our arthritis or something that we're not in the best of health. It may be that we're preoccupied with some worries and struggles currently. All of these things distort the communication, because while this person is speaking, this person may have their mind on their troubles, or maybe listening to the jet overhead, and that sure makes it difficult to understand what's going on. So we need to understand this process in order to, as lay pastors, be the most helpful that we're able to be to people, to listen to them, to be sure that they know that we're interested in what they're saying, and to be sure that we are understanding what they are communicating.
This concludes Unit 11. Please stop the tape. Our next unit will focus on confidentiality. Welcome to Unit 12 of the Lay Pastors Ministry Equipping Seminar on Confidentiality. In this segment, Ron Davidson, a professional counselor on staff with Hope Presbyterian Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, discusses the importance of confidentiality in the lay pastor's ministry. Here to introduce Ron is Dr. Mel Steinbron.
We have Ron Davidson with us to teach us on confidentiality. Ron is a member of the counseling staff at Hope Presbyterian Church in Minneapolis, but he also has a hands-on experience with the lay pastor's ministry. His wife, Judy, is a lay pastor, and Ron is a shepherd, a lay pastor of lay pastors. Confidentiality is one of the most important pieces of the lay pastor's ministry as we've been talking about it. Ron, could you help us by giving us a definition of confidentiality?
I'd be happy to. The first definition I will give is that of the dictionary definition, which is to keep secret. Now, in my profession as counselor, we can make the definition even go further, which I think is even more deeply applicable to what we do here. First of all, it is especially important in counseling. The patient reveals his private personality, that which he holds secret from the world. He communicates his struggles, his conflicts, his thoughts, real and fantasy, to the counselor. Confidentiality in counseling is necessary not only to protect the patient from embarrassment and disgrace, but also to accomplish treatment, which is the purpose of the relationship. A patient will not speak freely with a counselor if disclosure is likely. Effective treatment calls for true and complete communication by the patient of all his ideas and associations. Thus, treatment through counseling requires confidentiality to be successful. There's another point here, Mel, too, about confidentiality, which goes beyond the sphere of the patient. And that is, confidentiality fosters a related public interest. It induces the hesitant person in need of treatment to seek it out. And I would say the same for the lay pastoring. In regard to having that confidentiality, we think about trust, and we embrace that trust. We embrace the relationship. And if we were to break that and go forward and say, well, this person has this going on or that going on, we're making judgments, we're making decisions, and we're disgracing that person. And so it's a real responsibility. It's a real dear thing to hold the confidentiality. And if there is a need, we will hopefully have that relationship strong enough where we can ask that individual, you know, is it okay if I take this forward to someone? I think I know someone that can help. But we have to have the nurturing and the confidentiality, the solidity, before we're really ready to do that. And when I think about relationships, I think about trust. And that is the firm belief and the reliability that another individual will maintain confidentiality in what I disclose, tell, or admit.
Mm-hmm.
And through trust, what evolves? We have belief in that individual, faith. I come to you, Mel, and I have the trust, and in that there's faith, there's belief that you will not disclose. I have confidence in that, and I feel that you're very committed to the relationship. And in this too, there's another word that which I feel is very, very indicative of the relationship, and that is guardianship. And that you take it in and you kind of guard that confidentiality, that relationship. And whenever I take it further, I transpose it into you care. This has evolved, but it's taken time. We've worked at it, and it's evolved. And in care, there's very serious attention and thought. And to feel and have concern or interest in me. And in that, the way it's evolved is through nurture. And in the relationship, we feed, we nourish, we cherish the context of that relationship, the godliness that's within each of us. And we give support and we encourage one another, both in when times are joyful or difficult or in between. So, and I look at it too as the relationship as it's worked on and as it evolves, there becomes more of a level of comfort, and we hold that relationship dear. And we revere the relationship. And there are other words like honor, respect, reverence, esteem, appreciate and valuing. And we have great regard. And when you have that, you have something very, very special. And in the specialness, so many wonderful things can evolve. And in that person can really, really come forward and they can open their heart in time. And they say, hey, I need some support. Or I'm feeling great about this. I want to share it with you. And the other thing that I would really like to stress as we work on these relationships in the lay pastoring, I have found that as the relationships have developed, that it's not a one-sided street. And I get nourished too. And there are others that I can go to that I trust. And I value that. I value that greatly. But it doesn't happen overnight. And that's something that really needs to be stressed. And we work at it. We're love with skin on. And we keep at it. And not in a way that, we just bang, bang, bang. But we wait. But we're consistent. But we wait for that person's heart to open, for them to invite us in and say, hey, I'm ready. And so that's the value of consistency. So it's not a hit or miss proposition. It takes a commitment and real love and real care. Do you have any thoughts, Mel?
You were, this sounds good, Ron, and it helps us to understand the importance of earning the right to hear the confidences of a person. Mm-hmm. And it may take a long period of time. I've just been trying to process this in my own mind as you've been speaking. You were telling a story or two. Does that fit at this time?
Yeah. First of all, there's a Vietnamese proverb which I think is very applicable to this. And the proverb states that when you go to hell, that God provides an abundance of food. However, he gives the individual that goes to hell chopsticks that are a yard long. Now, can you imagine? Pretty tough to feed yourself. The same situation occurs in heaven, but there is one difference. The people in heaven take the chopsticks and they feed one another. And that is, again, a great deal of the relationship, being able to feed one another. Another story that really sticks in my mind is there's a small country in Europe, and within the country there are two rabbis. One was old and wise, a very learned man, and the people respected him immensely. The other was a young rabbi, and he was very, very envious of the older rabbi. The old rabbi would make a pilgrimage once a year throughout the country and visit all the villages. So the young rabbi, wanting so desperately to be noted and be held in high esteem, decided, aha, I will go whenever the old rabbi comes to our village, and I will come forth and I will ask a question, and in that I will have a bird in my hand, and I will hold the bird up, and I will say, Rabbi, is the bird alive or is the bird dead? And of course, the young rabbi has a choice. If the old rabbi says the bird is dead, the young rabbi opens his hand and lets the bird fly away. Or if he says that it's alive, he crushes it. So the old rabbi looks at the